My husband, Frank, went to the bank every Tuesday at exactly 2 p.m. For 38 years of our marriage, rain or shine, sick or healthy, he never missed it. When I'd ask why, he'd just kiss my forehead and say the same thing every single time. His voice a low, reassuring rumble. Just keeping our future secure, Susan. Just keeping us secure. I believed him. Why on earth wouldn't I? Frank was an accountant, a CPA. Numbers were his language. Organization was his religion. Our bills were always paid on time, sometimes weeks in advance. Our taxes were filed the first week of February. Our retirement accounts, he assured me with a confident pat on my hand, were as solid as a rock. The day he died, I was at the Heinen's grocery store, trying to pick out a perfectly ripe avocado. Michael, my son, called me, and his voice was one I'd never heard from him before. It was flat, careful, like he was afraid the words themselves might shatter me. Mom, he said, you need to come to the Cleveland Clinic. Dad collapsed at work. By the time I got there, weaving through the afternoon traffic in a daze, Frank was already gone. A massive heart attack, the doctor said. He probably didn't feel much. It was quick, clean, the way Frank would have wanted it if he'd had a choice. I didn't cry at the funeral. Everyone assumed I was in shock, that the grief just hadn't hit me yet. My sister kept patting my arm and whispering about how strong I was. But the truth was simpler and much stranger. I felt relief. Not because I hated him. I didn't. I had loved him. But somewhere deep inside, beneath the shock and the exhaustion and the endless parade of tuna noodle casseroles people kept bringing over, I felt like I could finally take a full, deep breath. I just didn't know why yet. 3 days after the funeral, a letter arrived. It was a plain white business envelope. No return address, my name typed neatly on the front. Inside was a single sheet of paper, letterhead from Cuyahoga Trust and Savings. Dear Mrs. Miller, we wish to express our sincerest condolences regarding your husband's passing. Per the terms of the Safe Deposit Box Lease Agreement number 847, we must inform you that you are listed as the secondary holder. The box has been paid in full through the end of the year. Please contact us at your earliest convenience to arrange for access. I read it 3 times. We had a safe deposit box. Frank had never mentioned it, not once in 38 years. I called the bank that afternoon. The woman on the phone was polite, professional. Yes, the box was registered to Franklin T. Miller, with Susan Miller as co-holder. Yes, I could access it with my ID and a copy of the death certificate. Would Thursday at 10 a.m. work for me? Thursday. 2 days away. I spent them moving through our quiet Colonial in Shaker Heights like a ghost, opening drawers Frank had organized with meticulous care, looking at files he'd labeled in his precise, blocky handwriting. Everything seemed normal, too normal, like a stage set designed to look exactly like a life well lived. Michael came by on Wednesday evening. He looked tired, his tie loosened, his eyes rimmed with red. He'd taken his father's death hard. Mom, he said, settling into the kitchen chair where Frank used to sit and read the paper. We need to talk about Dad's finances. I've been going through his office files and there are some things that, well, they don't add up. My stomach dropped. What kind of things? He pulled out a folder. Inside were bank statements, investment reports, documents I'd never seen before. Did you know Dad had 3 different checking accounts? 3? No, we only have the joint account at KeyBank. Had a joint account, Mom, he said gently, correcting my use of the present tense. He pointed to a column of numbers. This account at Chase, it's been empty for 6 months. This one at a credit union downtown was closed last year. And this one, he tapped a third statement from a bank I'd never heard of, has a current balance of $43. The room tilted slightly. That's not possible, I whispered. Our retirement account, the 401k alone, should have over $400,000 in it. Michael's face, etched with a pain that was suddenly deeper than just grief, told me everything before his words did. Mom, I can't find it. Any of it. That night I didn't sleep a wink. I lay in the bed Frank and I had shared for decades, staring at the familiar shadows on the ceiling, my mind racing through a lifetime of memories, replaying them in a new sinister light. The Tuesday bank trips. His gentle insistence on handling all the finances. The way he'd pat my hand and say, "Don't you worry your pretty head about the boring money stuff, Susan. I've got it covered." Oh, he'd had it covered, all right. Thursday morning arrived, cold and gray. A typical Cleveland November day. I dressed carefully, choosing a navy blue blazer and gray slacks. It felt like armor, not morning clothes. Michael offered to come with me, but I told him no. Whatever was in that box, I needed to see it first, and I needed to see it alone. The bank was a modern building, all glass and steel, downtown overlooking the lake. The branch manager, a woman in her 50s named Patricia, met me at the entrance. Her smile was sympathetic, yet professional. Mrs. Miller, I'm so sorry for your loss. Your husband was a valued client here for many, many years. She led me down a quiet hallway to the vault. The safe deposit boxes lined the walls like a wall of silent, metal teeth. She used 2 keys, hers and the one from Frank's desk that I'd been given, to open box number 847. I'll give you some privacy, she said, gesturing to a small windowless room with a simple table and a chair. The box was heavier than I expected. I carried it to the table, set it down, and for a long moment I just stared at it. Plain cold metal filled with locked secrets. The summary of a marriage I was beginning to realize I had never understood at all. I opened it. Inside were folders, lots of them, all labeled in Frank's neat hand. The first one I pulled out was marked Investments Actual. My hand shook as I opened it. It was page after page of losses. Bad investments in tech startups that had gone bust, failed stocks, risky ventures that had completely tanked. Hundreds of thousands of dollars gone. But these weren't our joint accounts. These had Frank's name on them and only his name. The second folder was worse. Home equity loans. 3 of them. Taken out against our house, our home. The place where I'd raised my children and planted peonies in the garden, and painted the kitchen 3 different colors over the years. The total debt was $270,000. I couldn't breathe. The small room felt like it was shrinking, the walls pressing in on me. The third folder was the one that nearly broke me. It was labeled Credit Cards, Miller Accounts. Except I had never opened these accounts. I had never seen these cards. But there was my name, my social security number, my forged signature on application after application. 15 different cards, from every department store and bank imaginable. All of them maxed out. Total balance, $96,000. He had stolen my identity. My husband, the man who had held my hand through childbirth and my mother's funeral and our daughter's wedding, had committed fraud using my name. I sat there for a long time just breathing. In out, trying to anchor myself to something real in a world that had just dissolved around me. At the very bottom of the box was an envelope, thick and cream-colored, with my name written in Frank's familiar handwriting on the front. I opened it with hands that were now perfectly steady. The grief, the shock, all of it had been burned away. What was left was something colder, clearer. Inside was a letter. Susan, if you're reading this, then I'm already gone. And you found the box. I'm sorry. That's an inadequate word, I know, but it's all I have left. 5 years ago, I made an investment I was absolutely sure would pay off. I can't miss deal. It missed. I tried to fix it to make it back. Every Tuesday I went to the bank, moving things around trying to find a way out, but I just dug us deeper into the hole. The house loans, the credit cards in your name. I did it all to buy us time. I thought I could fix it all before you ever had to know. I was wrong. By the time you read this, we're probably bankrupt. The house will likely go into foreclosure. Your credit is destroyed. I know you'll hate me. You should. I was trying to protect you from my mistakes, but all I did was make you pay for them. I'm sorry. I love you. That part was always real. Frank, I folded the letter, placed it carefully back in the envelope, and put everything back in the box. Then I walked out of that little room with my spine straight and my jaw set. Patricia was waiting in the hallway. Are you all right, Mrs. Miller? No, I said honestly. But I will be. I need certified copies of everything in that box. And I need the name of a very good lawyer. One who handles financial fraud. Her eyes widened just slightly, but she nodded. I'll make the copies for you myself. And Mrs. Miller, I am truly sorry. By the time I got home, Michael's car was already in the driveway. He met me at the door, his face tight with worry. Mom, I found something else. Dad's life insurance policy. Don't tell me, I said, setting my purse down on the hall table with more force than necessary. There isn't one. He blinked. How did you know? Because your father spent the last 5 years of his life destroying everything we ever built, I said, walking past him into the kitchen. And apparently he was very, very thorough about it. I pulled out the thick stack of copies from the bank and spread them across the kitchen table. Sit down, I told him. We have work to do. Michael read through everything, his face going from pale to red to pale again. When he was finished, he looked up at me, his eyes filled with tears. Mom, this is bad. This is really, really bad. I know. The house, your retirement, your credit. Mom, everything is gone. I know. How are you so calm? He asked, his voice a choked whisper. I sat down across from him and folded my hands on the table. Because being angry is a luxury I can't afford right now, Michael. What I need is a plan. The lawyer's name was Sarah Jenkins. Patricia from the bank had recommended her specifically for cases like mine. We met in her office the following Monday. A bright, airy space with large windows overlooking downtown Cleveland. She listened without a single interruption as I walked her through everything. The safe deposit box, the fraudulent loans, the credit cards, the forged signatures, Frank's letter. When I was finished, she leaned back in her chair. Mrs. Miller, she said, her voice direct but not unkind, I'm going to be very direct with you. This is one of the worst cases of spousal financial abuse I've seen in a long time. And I've seen many. The word hung in the air between us. Abuse. Your husband systematically destroyed your financial security, and he did it using your name. That's not just poor money management. That's fraud. It's identity theft. It's a crime. But he's dead, I said. What can we possibly do? We can prove you weren't complicit. We can work with the creditors to demonstrate that the signatures were forged. We can potentially save the house by proving the loans were fraudulent. But it is going to be a long, hard fight. How long? 6 months, maybe a year. And it's going to cost money that, from the sounds of it, you probably don't have. I thought about the $43 in our checking account, about the empty retirement funds, about the mountain of debt with my name on it. Then I thought about Frank's letter, about his neat, careful handwriting, about 38 years of, "Don't you worry, Susan. I've got it covered. I'll find the money," I said. "Tell me what we need to do." That night Jessica called. My daughter had always been closer to her father than to me. When I told her what I had found in the safe deposit box, the silence on the other end of the line stretched on for so long, I thought she had hung up. "Mom," she finally said, her voice small and uncertain. Are you sure? Maybe there's another explanation." "I have the documents, Jess. I have his letter admitting to it." "But Dad wouldn't do that. He loved you. He loved us." "He did," I said, my voice weary. "And he also stole my identity and destroyed our financial future. Both things can be true at the same time." She hung up shortly after that. Michael called me an hour later to tell me that Jessica had called him, crying, insisting that I was wrong, that I was slandering Dad's memory, that my grief was making me irrational. "She'll come around," Michael said. "Just give her time." But I wasn't so sure. Because I had seen this before in other contexts with other families. The person who refuses to believe the truth, the one who needs the lie to be real because the truth would shatter something fundamental inside them. The next few weeks were a blur of paperwork, phone calls, and meetings. Sarah Jenkins filed reports with the credit bureaus, contacted the credit card companies, and gathered evidence of the forged signatures. We hired a handwriting expert who confirmed what I already knew. I had not signed those applications. Michael threw himself into helping me. He organized files, made spreadsheets, and attended every meeting. One evening, as we sat at the kitchen table going through yet another stack of documents, he looked up at me. "Mom, I need to tell you something." I set down my pen. "Okay." A few years ago, Dad asked me to invest in something with him. A tech startup. He said it was a sure thing, that we'd both make a fortune. I had about $50,000 saved up for the kids' college fund. He wanted me to put all of it in. My heart sank. "Michael, please tell me you didn't." I almost did. But my wife Sarah, she didn't trust it. She said if it was such a sure thing, why did Dad need our money? We fought about it. I was so angry at her, but she held her ground. I finally told Dad no. He looked at me, his eyes haunted. "I think he was already in trouble then, Mom." I think he was trying to use my money to fix his own mistakes. And if I'd said yes, we would have lost everything too. I reached across the table and took his hand. But you didn't. Your wife saved you. That's what matters now. Do you think he would have just kept going? Taking from other people? I thought about Frank's letter, about his desperate words. I think he was drowning, I said. And drowning people will grab onto anything they can reach, even if it pulls someone else under with them. 3 months after Frank's death, we had our first small victory. 2 of the credit card companies agreed that the signatures were forgeries and formally removed the debt from my credit report. It wasn't much in the grand scheme of things, but it was something. It was proof that the truth could win even if it had to crawl. Jessica still wasn't speaking to me. She had sent a short, stiff email saying she needed space, that she couldn't handle the way I was destroying Dad's memory. Michael said she would come around eventually, but I wasn't convinced. Some bridges once burned stay burned forever. The lawyers for the home equity loans were much harder to fight. They argued that as Frank's spouse, I had benefited from the money, even if I hadn't signed the papers. Sarah Jenkins countered that I could prove I had never seen a dime of the funds. They had all gone into accounts solely in Frank's name, and had been spent on risky investments that failed long before I even knew they existed. We're going to have to go to court on this one, Sarah said during one of our meetings. A judge will have to decide if you're liable for debt created through fraud, even though you were married to the person who committed it. Will we win? She hesitated, and I appreciated her honesty. I think so, but I can't guarantee it. This is complicated legal territory. The court date was set for late November, 6 months after Frank's death. In the weeks leading up to it, I did something I hadn't done in years. I started looking for a job. At 64, I wasn't exactly a hot commodity on the job market. I'd been a stay-at-home mom for most of my adult life, going back to work part-time as a school librarian after the kids were grown. I had retired 3 years ago, looking forward to travel and grandchildren and the quiet, comfortable years I felt I had earned. Instead, I was applying for positions at bookstores and cafes, anywhere that would hire someone who needed to rebuild a life from nothing. A small independent bookstore in Chagrin Falls called me in for an interview. The owner, a woman named Ruth, was probably 70, with a shock of silver hair and sharp, intelligent eyes behind red-framed glasses. So, she said, looking over my sparse resume, you worked as a librarian. You've been married for nearly 4 decades. And now you're looking for work. May I ask why? I could have lied. I could have made something up about boredom or wanting to stay active. But I was so tired of lies, even the kind ones. My husband died 6 months ago, I said, my voice even. I just found out he stole my identity and completely destroyed our finances. I need a job because I'm trying to avoid losing my house. Ruth set down the resume and looked at me for a long silent moment. Then she smiled, a real genuine smile. When can you start? I worked at Ruth's bookstore 3 days a week. The pay wasn't much, but it was something. More importantly, it gave me a place to go, a purpose that wasn't just about survival. I loved recommending books to customers, organizing the shelves, feeling useful again. Ruth and I became fast friends. One slow afternoon, she told me about her own marriage, which had ended in a messy divorce 30 years ago. He wasn't dishonest about money, she said, restocking the mystery section. He was just dishonest about everything else. Other women, other lives, other versions of himself. When I finally left him, everyone told me I was overreacting, that all marriages had their problems, that I should just try harder. She looked at me over the top of her glasses. But you know what I learned, Susan? The people who tell you to try harder are usually the ones who've never had to try at all. The court hearing was on a Thursday, a cold, damp day with the threat of rain hanging in the air. Michael came with me. Jessica did not. She had sent a text the night before. I can't watch you do this to Dad's name. I'm sorry. I had replied, I understand. I love you. She hadn't written back. The courtroom was smaller and more mundane than I had expected from TV shows. The judge, a man in his 60s named Harrison, listened patiently as both sides presented their arguments. The bank's lawyer argued that I was Frank's spouse, that I had lived in the house, that I had benefited from the marriage, even if I hadn't directly benefited from the loans. Then Sarah Jenkins stood up and in a calm, clear voice, destroyed that argument piece by piece. She showed the forged signatures, the expert testimony, the separate accounts, the clear pattern of deception. She showed Frank's letter, his own admission of fraud. Then she called me to the stand. "Mrs. Miller," she said, "when did you first learn about these loans?" "When I opened the safe deposit box after my husband's death." "In 38 years of marriage, did your husband ever discuss taking out equity loans on your home?" "Never." "Did you receive any of the money from those loans?" "No. It went into accounts I didn't know existed." "Did you sign the loan applications?" "No, I did not." The bank's lawyer, a young man who looked like he was barely out of law school, stood up for cross-examination. He had the polished aggression of someone who had never really lost anything important in his life. "Mrs. Miller, isn't it true that you trusted your husband with all of your family's finances?" "Yes." "So, you chose not to be involved in the financial decisions?" I met his eyes. "I trusted him. That is not the same as choosing to be defrauded." "But you benefited from the marriage. You lived in the very house those loans were taken out against." "I lived in my home, yes. The one my husband and I bought together 40 years ago. The one he put at risk without my knowledge or consent." "And you expect this court to believe that in 38 years, you never once suspected anything was wrong?" That was the question, wasn't it? The one I had been asking myself for 6 long months. I took a breath. My husband was a CPA. He was good with numbers, he was organized, he was trustworthy. Or so I believed. He hid his mistakes behind a wall of competence, behind my trust, and behind 38 years of me believing that love meant not questioning, not doubting, not looking too closely at the things he told me not to worry about. I paused. Was I naive? Probably. But naivety is not consent to fraud. The judge called a recess. We waited in the hallway. Michael paced. Sarah checked her phone. I sat perfectly still on a hard wooden bench. "You did great, Mom," Michael said. I just nodded. I wasn't thinking about my testimony. I was thinking about Jessica, about the daughter who couldn't accept what her father had done, who needed the lie more than she needed the truth. After an hour we were called back in. The judge looked at both lawyers, then at me. "I have reviewed all of the evidence presented," he said, his voice grave. "The forged signatures, the expert testimony, the defendant's own written admission. While I understand the bank's position regarding spousal benefit, I cannot ignore the clear and overwhelming evidence of fraud committed without Mrs. Miller's knowledge or consent. I am ruling in favor of the defendant. The loans are hereby declared void. The liens on the property are to be released." Michael grabbed my hand and squeezed it. Sarah smiled a tired but triumphant smile. And I felt something that had been clenched tight in my chest for 6 months finally slowly release. We had won. But walking out of that courthouse I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt tired. Tired and older and strangely empty. Because what had I really won? My house, yes. My name cleared, yes. But I had also lost the marriage I thought I understood, the partner I thought I knew, and maybe a daughter who couldn't forgive me for telling the truth. That night Jessica called. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up the phone. "Mom." Her voice was thick, like she had been crying for a long time. I need to tell you something." "Okay." "After the hearing today, I went to the bank. I asked to see Dad's records, the ones you showed Sarah. I wanted to prove you wrong." She took a shaky breath. "But you weren't wrong, Mom. It was all there. Everything you said. And there was more. More. He had a credit card in my name, too. A student card from when I was in college. I never opened it. I never even saw it. But it's there. $23,000 in debt. My credit is ruined. And I never even knew. Oh, Frank. Even from the grave, your secrets just kept spilling out. Jessica, I am so sorry. I should have believed you," she sobbed. "I should have listened. I couldn't imagine Dad doing something like that. He was my dad. He taught me how to ride a bike, and he helped me with my math homework, and he walked me down the aisle at my wedding. How could that person also be this person?" "Both people were real, honey," I said softly. "The good father you remember, and the man who made terrible, desperate choices. People are rarely just one thing." She was quiet for a moment. Can I come over?" Of course, I said. Anytime. An hour later my daughter sat at my kitchen table and I made us tea and we talked about her father, about the debt, about how love and betrayal can exist in the very same person. How sometimes the people we trust the most are the ones who can hurt us the deepest. Not because they are monsters but because they are human and flawed and desperate. Sarah Jenkins helped Jessica file the same fraud claims I had. And Michael pulled all of us together. All three of us sitting in my living room going through documents, making plans, rebuilding. We'll get through this, Mom, he said. And for the first time I truly believed him. Not because it would be easy but because we were finally telling the truth, finally seeing things clearly, and finally not pretending that silence meant peace. The bookstore became my sanctuary. Ruth taught me about running a small business, about inventory and ordering, and the quiet satisfaction of matching the right book to the right reader. One day, a woman came in looking lost and overwhelmed. "Can I help you find something?" I asked. She hesitated, then said in a small voice, Do you have anything about financial abuse in a marriage?" I walked her to the self-help section, pulled down 3 books, and then on a sudden impulse I said, "I have some personal experience with this. If you ever want to talk." We talked for an hour right there in the aisle. Her story was different from mine, but the pattern was achingly the same. Control disguised as care. Isolation disguised as protection. Manipulation disguised as love. When she left, she hugged me, tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for believing me." After she left, Ruth looked at me from behind the counter. "You're good at that." "At what?" "Listening. Believing people. Not judging." I thought about Jessica's initial reaction, about the friends who had quietly pulled away when I started talking about Frank's fraud, uncomfortable with the messiness of it all. "I know what it's like to not be believed," I said simply. Over the next few months, more women started coming to the bookstore. Word had somehow spread that there was a woman there who understood, who had been through it, who could point them toward resources and lawyers and the simple, powerful truth that they weren't crazy. They weren't imagining it. They weren't alone. Ruth and I started a small, informal support group that met once a month in the back room of the bookstore. Just a circle of chairs, a pot of coffee, and women telling their stories. Financial abuse, emotional abuse, the quiet kind that doesn't leave visible bruises but leaves you hollowed out inside. I shared my own story at the very first meeting. All of it. The Tuesday bank trips, the safe deposit box, the forged signatures, the court battle, the daughter who initially refused to believe me. The difficult reconstruction of a life I thought I had all figured out. "How did you stay so strong?" someone asked. "I didn't," I said honestly. I cried. I was angry. I was terrified. But I just kept moving forward anyway because the alternative was giving up, and I had spent far too many years letting someone else make all my choices for me. The group grew. 10 women, then 15, then 20. We shared resources, phone numbers for lawyers, tips for rebuilding credit, strategies for dealing with family members who just didn't understand. One evening, after a particularly powerful meeting, Ruth and I sat in the empty bookstore, drinking cheap wine from paper cups. "You know what you're doing here, right?" she said. "Running a support group? No. You're building a legacy. Frank tried to destroy you, to leave you with nothing. Instead, you're helping other women avoid the same fate. You're taking the thing that hurt you the most and you're using it to help others." She raised her cup in a toast. "That's not just survival, Susan. That's transformation." I thought about that word, transformation. I had spent so much energy trying to get back to who I was before, trying to reclaim the life Frank had stolen from me. But maybe that wasn't the point. Maybe the point was to become someone new, someone who had been forged in the fire of betrayal and loss and the hard, slow work of rebuilding. A year after Frank's death, I stood in the bookstore at our support group's 1-year anniversary meeting. There were 23 women in that circle. Some I now knew well, others were new. All of us connected by the common, painful thread of having trusted someone who had broken that trust. "When my husband died," I said, looking around the circle, "I thought my life was over. And in a way it was. The life I thought I had, the marriage I believed in, the future I had planned, all of it died with him. But something else was born from those ashes. Not immediately, not easily, but gradually." I looked at the faces around the circle. What he did to me was wrong. Legally, morally, ethically wrong. And I will never pretend otherwise. But what I did next, that was my choice. I could have stayed angry. I could have stayed a victim. I could have stayed stuck in the betrayal. Instead, I chose to move forward, to rebuild, to help others, to transform my pain into a purpose. After the meeting, a young woman approached me. She couldn't have been more than 35, her eyes red from crying. "My husband handles all of our money," she whispered. "He says I'm not good with numbers, that I should just let him take care of it. But something just feels wrong. I don't know what just wrong." I took both of her hands in mine. "Trust that feeling," I said. "Ask questions. Look at the accounts. Don't let anyone, not even someone you love, keep you in the dark about your own financial life." She nodded, crying harder now. "But what if I'm wrong? What if I'm just being paranoid?" Then you look foolish for 5 minutes, and then you move on, secure in the knowledge that you were protecting yourself. But if you're right and you don't look, I squeezed her hands gently, you could lose everything. She came back the next month, a stack of documents in her hand. Her husband had been taking money from their joint account and putting it into risky crypto investments he swore would make them rich. He had already lost over $80,000. She had filed for divorce the day before. "I'm terrified," she told me, "but I'm also free." I knew exactly what she meant. Jessica's credit was eventually cleared, just like mine. Michael invested the $50,000 he had saved back when Frank had tried to get him involved in the failed startup into a Loctite college fund for his kids, where no one else could ever touch it. And me? I kept working at the bookstore, I kept running the support group, and I kept moving forward. On what would have been my 39th wedding anniversary, I went to the bank. Not the one where the safe deposit box had been, but a different bank, one Frank had never walked into. I opened a new account in my name only, just my name, and I deposited my first full paycheck from the bookstore. It was a modest amount, but it was all mine. The teller smiled at me. "Is there anything else I can help you with today, Mrs. Miller?" "Actually," I said, a slow smile spreading across my own face, "I'd like to change the name on the account. Not Miller. My maiden name. Susan Clark. Because that's who I had been before Frank, before the marriage, before the 38 years of trust that had turned to ash. And that's who I was going to be moving forward. Not erasing the past, but reclaiming the parts of myself I had set aside for too long." I walked out of that bank with my head held high, and for the first time in a year, I felt like I knew exactly who I was. If you're reading this, if any of this sounds familiar, the locked doors, the secrets, the feeling that something's wrong but you can't quite name it, trust yourself. Ask the questions. Look at the documents. Don't ever let anyone tell you that love means blind trust, because it doesn't. True love means partnership, transparency, and respect. And if you do find out that you have been betrayed, if you open that safe deposit box and your world falls apart, please remember this. You are stronger than you know. The person who tried to erase you did not succeed. You are still here. And that means you can rebuild. I did. And so can you.